Hey guys, Brandon with BYOTools, aka BYOT. Thank you for joining me. And today, if you want to learn how to create a floating shelf just like this out of a mere piece of driftwood, keep on watching. Let's start it.
Now the way this project started is all about a piece of wood that I found at the beach. Yes, the beach. And luckily I actually live pretty close, and no, this is not the piece that I found on the beach, but it's basically how I found it, where like, oh, look, it's actually a pretty nice piece of wood. I will bring it home and dry it out and see if I can use it for something. This project is all about actually restoring something from nothing. So I found something that was on the beach, thrown away, and how about let's try and restore it to something beautiful. It doesn't have to be this size of wood, this type of wood, but inevitably you could do this with any type of rustic timber wood that you find at a store or potentially at a beach. Now luckily for me, all I had to do is cut this piece in half because I had two very flat surfaces. Once I had it cut in half, I took the larger side, clamped it to my beautiful workstation table, drew a circle on the top of it, and started drilling. Now I'm drilling a hole in the top of this piece of wood because I was inspired with a shelf that had a beautiful little succulent on top of it that was drilled into the wood itself. Now, I've never done this before, so we were trying a few things that were a bit unique to my repertoire of tools, but inevitably it did all work out in the end. Now my main thought process behind this one was that I could drill a hole in the center of the wood and then use my router to route out the rest of the wood itself. But the wood that I have is pretty dense, so it wasn't really budging with the router. So I inevitably decided to grab my Dremel and drill holes every 1/4 inch around the outline that I drew earlier, and then actually drill larger holes through it and then route out the sides. Then I could actually go through the center and just chisel out the rest of it. Now, in all honesty and full disclosure, I highly suggest just having a hole saw and drilling this out yourself with a hole saw and then going about chiseling out the remaining in the center. That would have been probably a lot easier, and imagine the fact that I could have saved some time and energy. Now as a reference, if you are using a router, I would suggest using a straight bit, which is what I use to cut out the excess material in the hole, and then use a round over bit to make a nice smooth surface on top. That way it's a nice clean edge after you start sanding. Now as for sanding, I use my orbital sander and work my way from 120 to 220 grit sandpaper. As you can imagine, this piece of wood was quite rough to the touch, and I definitely wanted to smooth it down, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It has a very rustic look, and I want to keep it that way for the most part. Now technically this piece is going to be a shelf slash a planter, and due to the fact that it's going to be a planter, I wanted to make sure that moisture does not affect the wood itself over time. So I actually am utilizing a 2-part epoxy system to pour in the hole that I drilled out earlier. That way it has a waterproof seal on the bottom in order to make sure that no moisture is going into the wood over time. Now trust me, I do realize the fact that this is probably overkill and you're telling yourself, Brent, come on. This is a planter that is going to hold a succulent that doesn't need much water to begin with. Why are you worried about moisture into a wood? Well, I had an epoxy lying around, why not use it? And why not get some awesome footage of some epoxy that is pretty sweet, and I really do want to utilize it more often. Who doesn't love the fact that you have two liquids that are completely liquid, put them together and they become rock hard? Now as for wall support, I'm utilizing an old post cap that I had lying around from a previous project, and it worked out quite well. However, I do suggest a higher gauge metal bracket, potentially an L bracket that you can easily find at Home Depot, Lowe's, or I will leave a link in the description box below on where to get one. But inevitably this was a bit flimsy when I put it on the wall. However, I was able to secure it nicely, and it works. Just something that's a little bit more substantial will wear better over time. After I let the epoxy dry overnight, I proceed to cutting a section on the back of the shelf itself in order to accommodate the thickness of the bracket. That way the shelf lays flush against the wall after installation. There's a number of different ways you can go about removing this small amount of wood, but the easiest and the quickest way for me personally is taking a razor blade, cutting out sections, as well as just chiseling out in the end. Doesn't make it the cleanest look, but it's simple and effective. Now when it comes to finishes, still to this date, one of my favorite finishes is Armaseal's oil and urethane top coat. This is the same top coat that I utilized in BYOT number 23 when I did my beautiful black walnut dining room table. So please check out that video if you haven't already, because that table is absolutely beautiful and it has stood the test of time, or let's be honest, at least the time that I've had the table, which is approximately a year, but still gorgeous. When applying this finish to wood, I always love utilizing a foam brush. It is cheap and very easily disposable, as well as the fact that it leaves a nice, smooth, even finish on the product itself. After applying the finish to the entire surface, I then take a clean, lint-free rag and wipe off any excess anywhere. You want to remove the excess because if you don't, it's going to leave the surface tacky. And trust me, who likes a tacky finish? No one, right? Yeah. I apply 3 coats in the same manner, and then I take a sanding sponge and lightly sand the entire surface of the top itself. This just removes any high spots on the surface, and make sure that you are doing this when it's fully dried. After you complete the sanding portion, go ahead and take some mineral spirits, wipe off any of the dust on the top. After it's removed, then proceed in applying a very slight small amount of finish on the surface. That will just give it a nice smooth, even finish overall. Once applied, remove any excess with a clean rag, and you're done. We'll release with the finished portion of this project. Now, it's time to hang up. The nice thing about this bracket that I'm utilizing is the fact that it's pretty long and has multiple penetrations already built in. So I'm able to hit a stud quite easily while still at the same time making sure the plate is centered on the wall. One quick tip when trying to avoid a lot of cleanup is actually placing a piece of paper with literally 3 pieces of tape on it, which makes it more of a funnel and catches all the drywall dust that you potentially might be drilling out of the wall as you're drilling your holes for your anchors. I mean, to be honest, anything that helps with cleanup is definitely on my side, especially when it's basically free. Yes. Now, after you make sure your shelf is completely level, pre-drill your holes, place your anchors through the wall, tighten them up, and at this point just make sure your bracket is fully level, because if your bracket's not level, trust me, your shelf is not going to be level. I place my wood shelf on top of the bracket system, and again, the nice thing about this bracket is the fact that it has 4 pre-drilled holes ready to go for me. So all I have to do, put a few screws in it, and proceed to the next step. And finally, it's now time to put some greenery up in this bee. This is basically the only thing I purchased for this project, and the beauty of it was only $5 because it's just a beautiful little succulent. At this point, all I had to do is put some added soil into the hole, break down the succulent itself, put some beautiful rock that I actually did not purchase. I actually grabbed it from the beach. Yes, the beach that is right down the street where I got the log. Boom! Using Mother Nature at its best. Yes. Now at this point, all you have to do is go ahead and put a little water on your beautiful succulent, and guess what? You are done. Now, let's enjoy some beautiful slow motion action from this baby. Oh my goodness. Wow, that is quite beautiful. Doesn't slow motion just make everything better? Yeah. Now that's what I call one beautiful sexy beast of a floating rustic shelf. Oh yeah. Now I did get inspiration from this project from my trip to Greece, so why not dress it up with a few items that we actually purchased in Greece, as well as my keys, since I'm actually gonna use a shelf for something. Yeah.
And there you have it, episode number 42 of BYOT done. It's pretty incredible with just a bit of creativity and know-how. You can change something that you found on the beach just lying there for free into something pretty beautiful. Thank you all for watching. Please like the video, please subscribe to this channel, and please check out my Instagram feed. I post every weekly, if not daily. In any case, thank you for your time, and catch you next time.
I swear, sometimes stud finders are worthless. Yes. Am I using it wrong? Right? There's only really one way to use it, right?